going to greater heights, exploring these new horizons, these galactic landscapes that are ahead of us. And the focus today is trying to personalize this energy as much as possible and applying the key concepts of this transit to the different houses. So what I would like to do is first of all review some of the keywords. We talked about this in the first session. We looked at the different milestones, what to pay attention to. But now, let's really try to make it as concrete, as practical as possible. So first of all, as we describe the different concepts, let's begin unpacking the stages of development. And it may not necessarily happen in that order. However, it's a pretty standard model for Pluto. So, that fusion of Pluto with the archetype of Aquarius, and you will need to pay attention with anything that's related to this activation, to your natal Uranus placement. We talked about paying attention to the transiting Uranus, but I also, if you apply this to you, recommend that you apply this, that you look at your natal placement, because there's going to be an immediate reference to that. Now, some of you may also use the traditional rulers. You can look at Saturn as well. See what brings you more information, more relevant and more accurate information. Wherever we have Pluto coming up, we sense the sense of lack and this urge for increase and for change. So there can, we can start feeling that whatever we're doing, whatever's happening in this house, there's a sense of dissatisfaction. Just a second, I'm going to need to pause and come back. So, that is the invitation to start thinking about change. So this change can come from within, a sense that, well, you look at your life and you tell yourself, well, maybe there's more to life than this. Maybe I could add an extra room to my house. Maybe I'm done being single and I should start engaging more, build community, and maybe have a relationship. So it doesn't have to be trauma induced and dramatic. It can really come from a sense of what we call the wind of change, an internal sense of limitation that prompts you to start looking at things differently. And in many ways, that's, a calling for change, a calling for increase. And the key word for Aquarius is I need to upgrade my life. I need to lift it up. So remember that Aquarius strives to improve the quality of life. So your life may be fine, but somebody, or even, something you see online, something kind of makes you realize that you haven't considered certain options, that there's more to life than what you thought or what you have. And so Pluto ignites this need for more. Okay. And the upgrade means that combination of both Pluto and Aquarius, which are these change makers, each one pulling in a different direction. We mentioned how Pluto pulls down and Aquarius pulls towards the heavens. But there's a pull wherever you feel it. And so the need for an upgrade is affecting basically the quality of life. So if this affects your relationships, you're going to want an upgrade in your relationship. So it's not just new, it's not just a change, it's an upgrade. You're ready for the next level. You are going to be less compromising. Okay. There's a realization that there's more. So this can also be triggered through a crisis where you are in an existing relationship and your partner treats you badly. Your sex life is floundering. And you ask yourself through that, is that it? Should I just settle for what is happening? So that urge to say, I deserve more, I want more, can come from very subtle currents, or it can come from some kind of wake-up call that things should start moving, that you're stuck, and that you can't. You need to unstuck yourself. So that the thing is that Pluto also brings the opportunity to change. It's one thing to want to change, it's another thing to be able to. So the opportunity to change can present itself. How many of us are, invited to all kinds of different opportunities? And then we decide, whether we want to follow through, whether we respond to that or not. So the opportunity for change can be there. And these opportunities can come unexpectedly when you're just leading your own life, going, minding your own business, as we say. And then something unexpected shows up in your life. A person shows up in your life. Your roof falls off, or a new neighbor comes in and says, why don't we start a new business together? So it may be really something that is unexpected, that shows up in your life and invites you to this new adventure. Because it's in Aquarius, naturally Aquarius is linked to friends, to community. On a political level, Aquarius is linked to the parties. So are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you, belonging to the Green Party? Whoever you are with, your tribe on a political level is also represented by Aquarius. So these opportunities can come through friends, through your community, or through your party. Oh, friends of friends, etc. Now, the other way that these opportunities can show up is that you again go by following your own course of action, what you know and you've been doing forever, and it feels stale. Things, you're not making as much money, you're not making enough money, you're not stimulated, you feel bored. So one way or another, the call for change can be an imperative. It's, in easier circumstances, it's a choice. You can choose whether you want to change. Or it can be an imperative where it's not that you want a new computer and you're thinking about a new computer, but it's your old computer crashes and you don't have a choice but to buy a new one. And of course, this is an expense. You need to find the resources for that. So Aquarius, and especially Pluto in Aquarius, can force you to upgrade because whatever you were relying on collapses, crashes. Technology, relationships, employment, all, that's where the house that it's in will inform you where it's coming from. So you are basically compelled to change and upgrade. Now, this change and upgrade, again, prompts you to break old patterns, to think differently. Let's say Pluto's in your 5th house in Aquarius, and you're a parent. Your kids can come up with all kinds of situations and requests and, conundrums that require that you listen to things much more carefully. You can't just use the old formula. You're going to have to consult with your friends, consult with therapists, consult with them about how to address what is coming up. So Aquarius brings solutions that you may feel uncomfortable with initially. The same way that when there's new technology, you know how you feel that on the one hand, it's exciting. There's a new app to do charts, and there's something, promising about it. But on the other hand, you have to go through the process of learning this new technology, of testing if it's really better. And it's an adjustment. So when we say break pattern, it's not only about software and gadgets. It can also be an emotional trial where your kid needs to go to a new school because the old traditional public school, they're bullied there and they don't learn anything. And so from an Aquarian point of view, Pluto in the 5th or Pluto in the 3rd, you need to upgrade the education. You need to upgrade their situation. And that means you have to start doing research, looking for alternative schools. And it's a lot of effort, possibly money, time. So that kind of change can, like I said, it can be exciting, but it's an adjustment. Eventually, you may realize, wow, things are sitting much better now. Still, it takes a lot of fuel. And you start thinking differently about a situation. You start thinking differently about how you manage your life. So there's a lot of cleaning up. This can also affect your community dynamics. There can be new connections, a new network of friends, people again showing up in your life that make your life more exciting and bring new ideas. But it also may mean that you need to revisit some of the old old connections. Is the community of astrologers where you live, are they doing anything? Is it productive? Are they just doing the same old thing, and attendance is dwindling and attention is dwindling? So all of this can apply to, again, social dynamics as well. Now, sometimes, and it depends on where the trigger is, but it may be that the change that comes is really quick. Aquarius brings speed. And so there's a rapid development. You're thrown into a situation in unexpected ways, and it's happening faster than you anticipated. So you have to basically enjoy whatever's presented to you. And like we say, it can be an improvement in your life condition. You date someone who opens doors for you or is wealthier than you, and they take you to a new home and new job opportunities, technological advances in your life, get a new car, get a new computer, and that improves the function, the delivery, the practicalities. And then, like we said, your network, the alliances, community. So that can really stimulate your life. And that's what Aquarius really yearns for, is don't bore me, and bring some stimulation. Make me think, make me feel excited. And then, with fast change, we may experience a backlash. So that is the tension that I was describing in the first session between the upper world and the lower world. So we have the triangle of ascension, and you have the triangle of descent. Ascension is what everybody thinks about. Every spiritual system will usually encourage you to ascend, to transcend, to rise above, to let go, to be non-attached. It's all these lifting up, be in the ether, move away from the density. Don't let those negative emotions get a hold of you or bring you down or hold you back. So our continual message, what we hear from society and from our peers and from our spiritual teachers, is how we need to rise. Seldom do we get the recommendation to go down, to descend. Now, remember, the descent is exactly where you came from. When your mom gave birth to you, she was squatting or lying down. So incarnation is a descent. And how painful that was for her, for you. So the descent is as important as the ascension, but it's often encouraged. It's seldom encouraged. So Pluto quite often has to shake things up to remind us to come down, to remind us to build stronger foundations and roots, and to make us understand that whatever we are developing, growing, all the doors we're opening, they need to be integrated in the emotional body. When you have a balance between the upper world and the lower world, then you have balance at the heart. 3 chakras up, 3 chakras down. The middle one is the heart center. People's heart can open when they find that balance. If you're only in the upper chakras, you're constantly struggling in this world. You feel, alienated, disenchanted, disillusioned. Everything looks so miserable and people are stupid. When you're too much in your lower chakras, you're stuck in the mud and you can't let go, and you yearn for immediate gratification and you never satisfied. So extremes don't bring good results. When you know how to move beyond through the both worlds, you naturally have a heart connection, and life can work for you. So that's very relevant to the Pluto in Aquarius transit. When we speak about our keywords, I refer here to rapid increase, rapid upgrade. Your tree is shooting up, and you are basically striving, to reach for the sun. And that's exciting. And you want that. If you don't have strong roots, if you're moving too quickly, the fast change can lead to a backlash that then ignites the shadows. And then, this can mean that you're making a change, but you're not really there. It's like you bought this new car with plenty of buttons, and this car can serve you coffee, but it's so complicated that you don't use any of it. So you have this very expensive car that sits in the garage, or it breaks down. So there's something about improving your conditions in a way that's not integrated and can cause problems. You get a new job, it's exciting. You have a much better salary. But you realize, maybe you don't really like this new job. And so there's some kind of internal conflict between, I should be happy, this happened to me, I should be grateful, and I don't know why, I'm grumpy instead. So another thing is that you're fast to change, and you cut your ties with your friends because they are so superficial and so forth, and you make new friends, but these new friends actually don't last. They move to a new city, or you realize, it wasn't what it seemed. And so you don't have your old friends because you kicked them out, and you don't have new friends, and you have now a vacuum of emptiness. And that's what we can refer to a rebel without a cause, or with the wrong cause. You made the change for the wrong reasons. If things weren't broken, why did you need to fix them? With Aquarius, we talk so much about community and friends. So the shadow here is that those new friends or those old friends can show their shadow. So there can be a feeling that people are disappointing you, your community, the people you hoped you could rely on. Your tribe is turning against you. It's a little bit of what maybe I know is happening with what's his name, Trump, where his party is turning against him. So he has his supporters, but then it starts to get very contentious internally. So the tribe, the community, it becomes hostile. In extreme cases, you can have serious trauma. And remember that with Aquarius, it's not just one person, it's a group of people. So it's harder, perhaps, if one person treats you badly, it's one-on-one. But if a group of people turn against you, you can feel totally overpowered. And it can be that form of bullying where there's a gang against you. So betrayal of friends, of whoever your alliances are, and loss of allies. Loss can mean a rupture, not getting along, a violation of trust. A loss can also mean that, God forbid, a friend dies. Someone you were close to is leaving. So the whole concept of community can be under scrutiny, go through this intensity of Plutonian processes, revisiting who we want to be with, breakthroughs and breakdowns with and breakups with our friends, power dynamics within the community. You are this vegan movement and the yoga movement and the astrology movement, and there can be power struggle within the movement because people are not satisfied, people are pushing for change, and then you start to uncover corruption within those circles. There can be sexual issues, financial, emotional. It could be with Pluto in Aquarius that also a friendship becomes intimate, sexual, or an intimate partner becomes a friend. So that kind of migration between the Scorpio and the Aquarius, between intimacy and social interaction, in and out of that. Any questions so far? Great. So let's look at the different houses. A little messy, but just highlighting the key points. So we're going to start with the first house because that's the natural order. When Pluto's in your first house, you're either Aquarius rising or Capricorn rising. If you're born way north, you have, hugely disproportionate houses. So it can be slightly different. This is just a general model. Look at your own chart for reference. Pluto in the first house will be, if you are Capricorn or Aquarius rising. Which one wins, the upper or the lower energy? How to balance. The lower energy wins. Usually, the upper energy is faster. And so it may seem like it it's gaining ground. But the lower energy is patient. So you cannot build a tall building without solid foundation. You cannot have a strong trees without roots. So what is under the surface is going to be essential for the life of what is above the surface. You can have strong roots and a tiny tree, still the tree's there, but you cannot have any tree without strong roots. So the shadow work is essential. Back to our houses, Pluto in the first house. The first house has to do with whatever you're doing with your life, with how you go about doing anything. The first house is really who am I, and what do I want to do with myself, and what can I do with myself? So it has to do with ability, agency, autonomy. So Pluto in the first house can stimulate this lack, going back to the sense of lack, urge for increase, where it's going to happen if it's in the first house. My life. What am I doing with my life? So the first message of the first house is self-empowerment. I need to be able to build a stronger immune system, to take on stronger challenges. I need to push myself to the next level. So there can be basically a need to fortify yourself. Maybe you need to get an education so that you can have more opportunities in life. Maybe you need to go to the gym and strengthen your physical body. Maybe you need to work on yourself in one way or another. So the first house really refers to how you approach life and what are your options. Do you have options? Do you have choices? Or are you, impotent, limited, living in the basement, not seeing much of the sun? So crack those chains, breaking the chains is very much that first house. Birth yourself. And with Pluto in the first house, you have to go to the next level, deeper, higher. And so it can be that you will say, I'm quitting my job. I am going to try something completely new. That instinct to reinvent yourself is part of that first house. I need a blank slate. I need to reinvent myself. Maybe it's going to be because you went through a divorce and it was a difficult relationship. And now you're in the first house and you're free, but you kind of need to know who you are outside the marriage. You need to reinvent yourself professionally. So many things can trigger that. Yeah. So that's the essence of that first house transit. The second house has to do with your fuel. You want change. You want to reinvent yourself. What will power that revolution? Do you have the fuel for your car to drive the distance, for your body to drive the distance? So the second house is food because it's fuel, but it's also money and it's also body. So with Pluto in the second house, you're going to feel like you're poor. You can't do this and I can't do that. And, everybody's moving ahead and I'm stuck behind. So there can be a sense that you are financially crippled, financially limited, and you need to reinvent your story there. So the transformation will be on your salary. How much, what's your worth? What's your price tag, so to speak? And how are you going to up your value? If you feel like you're underpaid or that you want to be paid more, what will justify that? So do you, again, how do you up your value? Are you getting a new training? Are you developing new skills, etc.? So with Pluto in the second house, there can be, on the one hand, looking into efficient ways to refuel your soul. And it can also, have to do with a lot of movement, transactions related to the second house, investment, maybe, with Aquarius, you're going to flip houses. With Aquarius also, we mentioned maybe there could be financial opportunities that are linked to your community. Maybe a friend can lend you money. Maybe a friend offers you a job. So that connection between the social and the financial can stimulate improvement. The other way also, it could be that you are helping a friend, that you are the one making a difference in someone else's life financially. You're offering someone a new job, etc. So, before I move on and talk, I wonder if there's anyone in the room with first house and second house Pluto transit. if you, if that relates to you, just give a shout. Third house. So you're going to be Scorpio rising or Sag rising usually. And the third house has to do with intellectual development, knowledge in general. So you remember, knowledge is power. Pluto, third house, knowledge, power. The more you know, the higher your price tag. So Sila's sharing, Pluto on my ascendant, very palpable. Would be great if you have something to share about that. But going into the third house, it could be that you're expanding on your intellectual capacity, that you're taking new courses, that you're improving, your education. There can be, many of us went to school after, when we were in our teens and 20s and started following that, we, build families, build careers, and then suddenly, Pluto enters your third house and you can feel like you want to go back to school. You want to be stimulated and you're going to study something that is really closer to your soul. So there's a need for greater interest. There's a need to come up with new ideas. The educational part can be extremely stimulating, making you feel like you're studying something that is so interesting to you, maybe astrology, right? Iman, you don't need to raise your hand, just type if you want to share something. Okay. I don't know what to do with raised hands. Okay. It shows that it's raised. So Anathea says, a beginning of the third house. So that can also be the way you share knowledge. But, it is about having your mind blown. You kind of crack your skull open and you start by learning new things, by teaching new things. Your universe is expanding because, our mind is how we perceive life. So if we change our perception, if we learn new things, we can make better decisions, we can succeed. So that's a very expansive process, Pluto in the third house. Always, within this kind of circle, there can be a lot of ideas and breakthroughs. It can be an extremely creative time where you suddenly offer solutions. You want to start a new business. So your mind is kind of able to conceptualize new things and to advance yourself into this new world. One of the things that you may need to explore some of the shadows with in the third house could be with siblings. So is there a sibling who is helping you, or a sibling who is, struggling and you need to come to the rescue? Whatever the situation, whatever the crisis point, the Aquarius speaks about the need to take the higher road. Don't get stuck in too much drama. Upper tree, root, address what needs to be addressed, but don't sink into accusations and low frequency exchange. So it's an opportunity to start being more reasonable, to start communicating with your siblings in a new way, to maybe resolve old conflicts. In another way, it could be that you are doing something new with a sibling, that there's a new revelation, that the siblings are the catalyst for new experiences. So as you expand your horizons, your life expands, your interest expands, you become a more sophisticated person, you become more refined. So it elevates your class, if you will. And like I said, knowledge is power in this case. Fourth house is going to address, obviously, internal issues, personal, emotional, anything that has to do with your support system. So Pluto in the third house, I'm taking the diploma course in astrology, starting new activities and education in scientific research, reconciliating with my sister after 18 years. So much going on, like a new world is opening. Beautiful. So in the fourth house, you work on your support system. Do you have a family that will be there when you need help? Are you able to ask for help in the first place? So this whole thing about, allowing yourself to be vulnerable sometimes, not always be the hero on top of your game, successful. When Pluto enters your fourth house, you realize you're not invincible. And that means sometimes that you do need to take a break. You may break down if you push too hard, if you're not paying attention to your body, to being overburdened. So it's an invitation to slow down and to revisit what really gives you comfort, love, and support, and nourish that. So if you already have a support system, Pluto can expand it. Maybe you're going to make new friends, and these friends are going to be like family. Maybe you're going to join a community that's going to feel like family. On the other hand, the opposite. If you have an existing support system, Pluto can get in there and suddenly make you realize that it's thin, that, when you are vulnerable, nobody's coming, nobody's budging, and you suddenly feel disappointed that you don't really have a strong support system. So there can be a lot of shadow work around, who are my true friends, who is my family, and how to redirect that, how to rebuild a more solid support system. Remember also with this configuration to change things too rapidly. Sometimes people don't show up for you and they disappoint you. Does that mean you need to eliminate them from your life? Try to see if it's, if those radical measures are required, how far you want to go. It could be also that you provide a support system for others. If your parents are going through a crisis, they're aging, they need more help. So as you help them, you get in touch with their vulnerabilities. You realize that they were the strong ones and now they're not strong anymore. So it gives you that perspective that nobody's invincible. And it also gives you a perspective on you when you're going to get old. Who's going to be there for you? So that's the fourth house, realizing, that we cannot do it all alone. And if you feel isolated, how are you going to repair that or build new foundations? Fifth house, it's different issues, different layers, a sense of purpose. Of course, it will depend on how old you are when you go through this transit. Are you going through a fourth house Pluto when you're 18 or when you're 75? Are you in the same with the fifth house? If you're going through this transit when you're young, it can be that need to speed forward, come with tons of projects, feel that immense creativity, wanting to change the world, feeling like, wow, there's so much we can do. So Pluto in the fifth house can, again, empower you and make you feel that so much is accessible. You are the master of your destiny. be careful of building too much too quickly again. There can be that sense of excitement and acceleration with Pluto in Aquarius, taking on a lot. And then, is it sustainable? Do you have the fuel to power all these projects? How much is too much and how much is enough? If you're experiencing this transit at an older age, it may have to do with a new sense of purpose. Are you retiring now? What do you want to do with your life next? Are you going to keep busy? So it can revitalize your sense of purpose and bring radically new direction. Now, I want to remind everyone of what we said in the first session. All these activation in the different houses are specific to that house, but you always have to look at where Uranus is. So because Uranus is now in Taurus, for all of us, wherever our Pluto is, there's going to be a financial layer to whatever house it's involved with. Then when it's going to move to Gemini, it's going to move to our networks and our education and ideas. It's going to get more intellectual. So pay attention to what Uranus is doing along the way, because it has a direct channel to what's going on with Pluto in Aquarius. Fifth house is also children. I talked briefly about this. There could be emotional challenges with children. There could be new projects with children wanting to upgrade their lives. They may rebel against authority, against you, or they may need alternative solutions to their personal existential challenges. And there could be also new technology, people who want to have children. There could be some kind of awakening about, what do we want for the future generation? How are we empowering the future generation? Do we want to have kids? Are we using science and technology to improve our odds of fertility? In the fifth house, another node, there could be also some power struggles, because it's a house where we take on and we become leaders. So it could be a situations where, two leaders are in the same room. You're working somewhere and you want to bring change to the company you're working with. And there's another person who's not necessarily seeing eye to eye. So there could be, some ego powers colliding. And I mean ego in a good way and ego in a bad way. It's about how supported you feel in what you want to create and actualize with yourself. Okay, is it natal or a transit? It's both. Obviously, the natal Uranus is in the same place. It's not going to move because that's where you're born with. So the natal Uranus has a direct channel to the issues in questions. But the transiting Uranus is going to tell us, how is the activity? How is it powered? So you need to synthesize both. Sixth house Sixth house has to do with the productivity of your life. What are you harvesting? You're working hard. You have tons of ideas. Is it working? How many of us, go through lives where we are very passionate about something and we do, but then our bank account is empty, or we feel drained and tired. So the sixth house is kind of the house that assesses what is coming out of all of this. Is it sustainable? Is it worth it? So is it working? So with Pluto in the sixth house, you may want to improve the efficiency of your life. Are you bringing the goods? Do you have a life that you are enjoying? Are you producing? Are you on top of your game? So there could be obviously a lot of questions and doubts about the sustainability of your lifestyle and how to clean that up, how to reconfigure your management, the way you manage your life. What needs to go, what needs to change, who needs to be with you. So there could be, situations of crisis that require, a reconfiguration of the way you do you, the way you do your life. Is your job, eating you up? Can you reconfigure that? Can you work in a place where it doesn't drain you and it pays well? Are you healthy? Are you working yourself to death? So the bottom line with that sixth house is not only how much you're producing, but is it worth it? Is it worth the investment of energy? And so you can go through a phase where you realize with Pluto in Aquarius in the sixth house, you need to go to the shop and basically revamp your whole system. Because, honestly, when you have Pluto transiting your sixth house, you are aiming at really, really high standards. That combination of Virgo, sixth house, Aquarius, and Pluto is the pinnacle of perfectionism. It has to be high efficiencies. So you're really aiming high, and it's an opportunity for you to really refine those skills and become the master, become so good at what you do and manage your life so well, be more efficient and bring amazing goods. So it's an opportunity to really improve the quality of your life, but it's work and it's thought. And if you're lazy, it's going to be a nightmare, because that Pluto in the sixth house in Aquarius is not for the lazy. It is for those who are aiming high. Seventh house, Cancer or Leo rising. Obviously, anything that has to do with relationships. So Pluto in the seventh house is it enough? Am I happy with my relationship? Or is my partner happy with me? It can come both ways. You can start to reconfigure, redefine what is important. What are your priorities in relationships? Do you feel like you're growing apart? Is it time to have more honest discussions with your partner? The intention is to upgrade your relationship. If you manage that, it means that your existing relationship can move to the next level. It's not easy because all of us know when you are in a long-term relationship, you establish patterns. You're doing this, you're doing that. Everybody is entering a routine of habits and roles, and it gets pretty set. So Pluto comes into the seventh house for the next 20 years and says, maybe we need to rethink what we do. Is the sexual chemistry still there? How do we spend quality time together? How do we not get distracted by survival and practicalities and really bring a true connection and mutual exchange? So it's about really understanding that your partner needs to be your friend. And you need to feel stimulated in your relationship. You need to feel that your relationship takes you to the next level. Pluto in the Aquarius in the seventh is not going to be satisfied with safety only. Having a partner who is safe, who is predictable. It's going to want to elevate, stimulate, develop those relationships. One thing that can happen is a need to bring a more social life into your relationship. So one of the things that could happen is, you are in your personal one-on-one relationship and you're spending more time with friends. You're going on vacation with a group of other couples. So the social aspect of Aquarius can enhance, stimulate your relationships. Making new friends, going to new places, etc. It could also be that, again, this interplay between friends and lovers. A lover becomes a friend becomes a lover. On some cases, it could also mean you open the relationship, very Aquarian, looking at relationships from a more conscious, maybe more mental, intellectual point of view, and saying, let's not get too emotional. Let's not let the drama of attachment and possessiveness rule our world. And then Pluto is going to say, does this have roots? Can I really trust these open relationships? Am I feeling threatened? So that is definitely, going to affect the upper, lower mental, emotional dialogue. On the surface, it may seem great to open the relationship, but when it actually I'm in the thick of it, it can be terrifying. In one way or another, there's a yearning for an expansion of your social life. Eighth house, is the house where you need to change, in the first place. So again, Pluto in the 8th house in Aquarius is high intensity. Let's blow all the boundaries. There's more to life than this. I can't stand my body. I'm about to explode because I'm so restless. So as Pluto grows into that 8th house, there could be a lot of feeling of limitations. Again, the need to break any chain, anything that holds you back. It's again this hunger. You're hungry for more. You feel like you haven't experienced the things you needed to experience. You want to push harder, stronger. That's one aspect of the 8th house, is give me more. And so as you want more, you also push and risk and explore. So there's a whole redefinition of yourself and your boundaries. Sometimes this need for change, as we say, can be triggered by external events, where there can be a crisis in your life, where the things you rely on are not working, and you need to think that if you're not going to change, you're going to lose what you have. You may lose your job, you may lose your lover, you may lose your house, you may lose all these things that you relied on because you try to play safe, because you tried those shortcuts. So in the 8th house, you come to this critical crisis point where you need to crack the shell open, if that makes sense. I hope I'm speaking in ways that are tangible. So it's, on the one hand, Pluto in the 8th house can bring, greater opportunities, deeper friends, deeper connections, finding, people who are really on a soul level with you. But again, if there's not enough work behind it, it can be a painful experience where you feel disempowered, where you're losing control, and there's an experience of loss. Why loss? Because the loss confronts you with your limitations. Always with the 8th house, there are also a lot of issues around trust. Who can you trust? Can you trust your community? Can you trust your friends? Who are your allies? Who are your adversaries? So there's a lot of play on the shadow and light, and issues about emotional safety, trust. So the best case scenario is that major upgrade and increase. You get more money, you get more friends, you get better sex, you get amazing spiritual realizations. The downside is people let you down, loss, and needing to work hard to put all these pieces together back again, to reconfigure your life in a new way. ideally, you vetted everyone in your life when Pluto was in the seventh. Ideally, you definitely went through an important introspection and re-evaluation with Pluto in the seventh house. But the eighth house, is where it gets real. And there are real tests of vulnerability and tests of trust and strength. But if we work our eighth house in a positive way, it is the game changer. It's the house of transformation. So are you going to be a butterfly? That's what's required through this. What will it take is an important question here. Ninth house, we revisit those issues around education, and maybe, as Pluto wants empowerment and more power, with the eighth house, with the ninth house, I may suddenly realize, actually, I can get a degree. I may be more capable than I thought. So perhaps you want to go back and get a PhD. Perhaps you want to study something that can make you feel more realized spiritually, academically. There can be a revival, a reignition of your passion. So breakthroughs. It can also be a place where you're suddenly opening up to travel, opening up to new opportunities, outside the emotional security. So, in a typically ninth house way, embrace the adventure. And intellectually, academically, this may be a time where you want to push yourself, where you want to learn more and challenge your own mind. When you have to be involved academically, it's a lot of hard work, but it's also changing the way you think, more objectively, less personally. And of course, Pluto can also bring some shadow work in those ninth house matters, which in some cases can mean a lot of shadow with the academia. Are the teachers fair, honest? Is there discrimination? Are they really equipped to teach? So there can be, sexual intrigues with teachers, things that Pluto loves, scandals, and that interplay between the higher mind and the emotional complexity. So with Pluto moving into the ninth house, there's an explosion of spirit. Again, blowing your mind, amazing realization, so much learning, new people who become so inspirational. But on the other hand, what's happening behind the scenes? Are these teachers ethical? So, the emotional side needs to be properly handled as we expand our horizon to the higher mind. If we relate this to the chakra, it's that balance between the three upper chakras and the root chakra. So Pluto is like the root, attachments, insecurities, survival. And the ninth house, Aquarius, is like, let's meditate, let's save the world, let's be enlightened. And these centers need to talk to each other. The most classic example is when you have the guru, basically taking advantage of disciples and all the cult drama that can follow. In another way, the ninth house on a deeper level is really about expanding your mind, the higher mind, but it's also about speaking up. So Pluto in Aquarius in the ninth house may also have to do with sharing your unique ideas, having the confidence to have those honest conversations, to bring things to light. If Scorpio in the eighth house was what's under the surface, now in the ninth house, you are bringing things to light. So it's having the confidence to speak up, to say, I can, I will, and I'm going for it. Tenth house. Fanaticism, because what is fanaticism? It's higher mind and lower chakras not talking to each other. So you have people with high ideologies tied to really low vibration emotions. So it's a classic Pluto in the ninth house crisis, where people can misuse knowledge, can misuse spirituality for personal greedy insecurities, using God to control women, so to speak. So it's very vulnerable to fanaticism in all kinds of different ways. And thanks for bringing this up. The 10th house, is obviously status, development of your career, and so it's, with Pluto there may be a lot of effort to improve your status, to gain ground, to get new roles. You get promotions at work, and you have more power, you have more prestige, you have more influence. And then, are you able to create the change? The Plutonian test about your integrity. Do you gain more power? And then what are you doing with it? Are you advancing the world? Are you serving your community? Are you bringing good to this world? It's very seductive to have more power, and you come with great ideals, Aquarius, but then you become greedy and you want more and bigger salaries, and you forget your ideals of helping people and whatnot. So it's the classic test of are you walking your talk? Are you really using your power in a way that is effective, helpful, and makes a difference? And eventually, if you're not aligned, Pluto in the 10th house is ruthless, takes people down and smashes them like little flies. So, the worst case scenario of Pluto in the 10th is a fall from grace. It's a collapse of the tower. It's that tarot tower falling down, because Pluto in the 10th house is going to reflect corruption sooner or later. It's not always instant, but when the wheels are in motion, it's again from the very top to the grave. This can also happen by association. It's not necessarily you who's falling from grace. It can be that you get involved in exposing corruption, or you just witness, the boss in your company, is dismantled and there's a scandal of some sort. So, it can happen in so many different shapes and forms at different levels of intensity. But that's one of the applications. Along those lines, the bottom line of Pluto in the 10th is the right use of power. So in Aquarius, it's also the right use of intelligence, the right use of science, the right use of technology. And the whole thing about socioeconomic justice, are we serving only the 1%? Or are we, making the resources available to everyone? The risk of elitism is amplified. Always also with 10th house, 4th house, we may see parents go through their own, personal health issues, crises, changes. So there can be, in a way, a leader who is being replaced, whether that leader retires, whether that leader is dismantled, whether that leader is taking a break. Circumstances can change. But with Aquarius, the purpose is to elevate the style of leadership, to bring more consciousness, more enlightened leaders, more conscious people, and of course, to be yourself, an enlightened leader. Legalities, again, if it's not sitting well, if that Pluto, is kind of this corruption detector, if the person is not following the law, they can be exposed. So yeah, whether it's the person themselves or someone next to them, don't break the law when Pluto's in the 10th house. It may not be worth it. Pay your taxes. 11th house, obviously a double signature here. What are we upgrading in the 11th house? we want a better future. We're thinking about where we're headed, what we're doing, what are our, longer term ambitions. And so Pluto in Aquarius in the 11th house basically is about saying, I need a new plan. I'm not going to retire the way I thought I'm going to retire. It may be a time where you are relinquishing old ambitions and finding out that what you thought you always wanted, you're not wanting it anymore. It doesn't taste as good. It doesn't look as promising. So you're kind of, the 11th house is your future. So what kind of future you want for yourself and for others. And obviously that means what you're going to do with your life. Because if you want, a certain future, means right now you're going to do certain things for that. So if your idea of what you want for your future is reconfigured, then you may also reconfigure what you're doing at this present time. So there can be some kind of disillusionment about what you always idealized, what you always thought was the best, what you always thought was, the promise. And you suddenly just want to live alone in the country. You don't want all the things you aim for. But there could also be a lot of changes in your social life, whether it's friends, whether it's community, or your party, your organization. You're part of this astrology organization, so there may be changes there. In a very immediate way, with Pluto in the 11th house, you are flipping this old house of yours, or you're flipping somebody else's house, but you're getting in and you need to modernize everything. It's a complete kind of remodel. And so it's an immensely creative transit. It's fertile with ideas, with projects, with what you want to do. And it can be wonderful. On the other hand, like we said, it can go too quick, too fast. You may, again, want to bring ideas that people are not following, power struggles around, the need for change. Is it worth the change? Don't fix it if it's not broken. These are a lot of 11th house questions or considerations. Let's see, there's a comment here. And Pluto has been my 11th house since 2014. 90% of my friendship have ended. Big change in how I show up in my friendship and type of people community I resonate with. Breaking free from a lot of ways I was conditioned to be and think. Taking a more unconventional path, especially in comparison to the people around me. Hungry for higher knowledge all the time, including astrology. That's kind of a poster description of this. So, once again, a consideration of social dynamics. Who are your friends? And building new alliances, building new networks. And not being, as I speak about upgrading, it's similar to the 6th house. The 11th house is, how am I really going to get where I want to get? How is my vision going to materialize? Is it going to stay a vision? Am I holding on to unicorn dreams? Or do I have a tangible plan of action? The 12th house, my favorite. Complex, obviously. The 12th house is the house where we re-examine our existential meaning, the very deep question of why am I here? So with Pluto in the 12th house, you can have both experiences and move one to the other. Where on the one hand, it can be a time where you have revelations, where you have those downloads. Even, it can even enhance your psychic abilities, because Pluto, Aquarius, 12th house, it's all, the effort to push beyond the veils, to access altered states of consciousness. So it can be a time of, aha, wow, being blown away by what shows up in your life and renewed meaning. On the other hand, it can also show that because of a crisis, because of a loss, you suddenly lose trust in life. You suddenly feel like God is not on your side. Is there a God at all? So you can become more bitter, more cynical, and it can create disillusionment. It can create this feeling that you don't want to be here, that it's all messed up and not worth it. So it's a deep process of really reconsidering the greater meanings for life. The big fundamental question of the 12th house is, are you happy? The 6th house is, does it work? Do you get what you really wanted? And the 12th house is, you got what you wanted. Are you happy? Does it work on an emotional, spiritual level? So you can have, the great partner, the great car, the great spiritual community, everything checks. And you feel like you're disenchanted, disengaged. It doesn't move you. And so something's not really you've missed the plot. And so it can be a time where you're stripping the layers because you want to get to the bottom of what really makes you happy, and maybe go back to simple values, go back to real people in your life. You were surrounded by all these brilliant academic whatever, and then you realize they don't make you happy, these nerds. And you don't want to be among the intellectual elite. You'd rather be, with people who cook you a warm meal. So, there's a whole shift of perspective about your priorities in life, and the real research about what makes you happy. So best case scenario, revelations, deeper connections, etc. The worst case scenario is that disengagement, disenchantment, cynicism. And worst case scenario, it could be a time where you experience extreme vulnerability. Pluto represents your ability to resurrect, to survive crisis. The word I'm looking for is to regenerate. So Pluto is your regenerative power. And if it's in your 12th house, you may run out of steam and suddenly realize, I can't wake up anymore. I don't want to get out of bed. You can't regenerate. So a few things need to be addressed if that's the case, for you and for your client who may go through that, is to understand there may be a few reasons for that. One of them, it's a spiritual crisis. So strip those layers, do the work to try to find out what really is important in your life. Simplify. The key word for the 12th house is to simplify your life. It got too complicated. You've got too many stuff going on, too much connection, and is it working? But there's also another component that you need to pay attention to in the 12th house, and that is sometimes you become weakened because it's a house where you are so exposed, where you are so connected that you end up taking on all the pain of the world, all the toxicity of the world. And that can happen just, physically. You can feel drained. Sometimes it's also because of alcohol use and all kinds of spiritual tripping. There's a whole now movement of psychedelic experiences to, break physical boundaries and access altered states of consciousness. And there is a real revolution because so many people have now access to this and are coming to their spiritual power. So that can be a positive of the Pluto in the 12th. But if it's mismanaged, you may not have proper immunity. You may not have proper protection. And you can be vulnerable to psychic attacks. And it's more real than you realize, because if you're not aware of that, you don't understand what's going on. You don't understand why nothing works in your life, why you feel so weak. Maybe it's your diet, maybe you need to sleep more. There's nothing that makes sense. So these psychic attacks, sometimes you have to really play detective to understand that they're there. You feel overwhelmed by this immensity of life, by the energies around you. And because you're not protected, you end up contaminated by the world and contaminated by specific people who may do you harm psychically. So Pluto in the 12th can be about regenerating your own spiritual power and to understand how to filter what you want to take in and not. So things to consider, with this transit. If it's really mismanaged and going downhill, it could lead to mental and physical health crisis. It could be a breakdown of an immune system. But it doesn't need to go to those extremes. In a more positive way, it is about reconfiguring your spiritual life. In a completely other way, the 12th house, because it's a public house, because it relates to the greater whole, Pluto in the 12th house can also make you relevant on a public level. Maybe with Aquarius, your astrology is going to go viral. And an article you write spreads across the oceans and the continents. So there can be, this immensity of communities and people who are responding to what you're giving. Many people rise to fame through certain transits in the 12th house. So, that's basically part of the service, understanding your greater calling, your greater service, and saying, I need to say yes. If people need it, if people respond to it, let's show up for that. So I've seen many people with Pluto in the 12th, go through phases where they became very visible. They were anonymous. Nobody, knew about their work. And then suddenly, they got access to larger crowds and communities. "12 houses." I hope this gives you an idea. There are many layers and mitigating circumstances, but it gives you a direction and general understanding of how to use this practically. A quick question: how to integrate Pluto transit in Aquarius in a house with a house transit with solar direction? Shall we look at both houses? Remember, if you look at yourself, in every given day, is there only one thing that happens to you? No, usually not. You have your whole chart operating simultaneously. So you may have a job opportunity, but then your husband is sick. And then your daughter wants a puppy. And then the city council, is building new pipes, destroying your road because they're putting pipes in. So many things in our lives happen simultaneously. The same way transits can happen simultaneously. You may have this Pluto in the 12th, and at the same time, Mars is in the 5th, at the same time, the progression is doing something else. And yes, our lives are a dance of multiple activations that we respond to. So they may be related. Maybe this 5th house Mars is connected to the 12th house Pluto. If there's an aspect, if there's a dispositor, I mentioned how the Uranus transit is not going to be immediately tied to the Pluto transit. So there are things that trigger each other, but in other cases, they may not be related. They may be like unrelated electrons during their dance. Ultimately, everything's united. So, again, this is a preview, you know. It's about understanding the energies. The next step is for the next 20 years, have a journal and write down your experiences so that the next generation may know all about how it feels to have Pluto in Aquarius. I felt better today with Pluto moving into my 12th house. Great. Peace and inspiration and health. Until next time, next week. Bye-bye.